Welcome to Daily Variety, your daily dose of news and analysis for entertainment industry insiders. It's Wednesday, April 15th, 2026. I'm your host, Cynthia Littleton. I am co-editor-in-chief of Variety alongside Ramin Satuda. I'm in LA, he's in New York, and Variety has reporters around the world covering the business of entertainment. In today's episode, we'll hear from Variety's Gene Mattis as he breaks down the Writers Guild of America's 4-year contract agreement with the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. It will be sent out to Guild members for a ratification vote starting April 16th. This time around, the Guild's focus at the bargaining table was all about getting the studios to write them a check to shore up the healthcare plan. But before we get to that, here are a few headlines just in this morning that you need to know. It's upfront season, and that means renewals and cancellation news is flying. Taylor Sheridan's drama The Madison has been renewed for Season 3 on Paramount+. Amazon Prime Video has ordered a second season of Young Sherlock. Peacock has renewed The Burbs for Season 2. ABC has given the nod to a 9th season of The Rookie and Season 5 of Will Trent. Layoffs keep coming. The BBC is cutting 2,000 jobs. Snap is axing 1,000 jobs, or 16% of its workforce. Soccer star Lionel Messi is powering up for Duracell. The Inter Miami superstar will pitch the copper-topped batteries in promotions leading up to the World Cup tournament. The action on the pitch starts June 11th. This time around, the World Cup will be carried in the U.S. by Fox and Telemundo. The UK's United Agents 10%er is launching an unscripted division. It will handle reality TV stars as well as creators and influencers. It will be run by United Agents veteran Matt Nichols. My colleague Alex Rittman in London had the scoop. All of these stories and so much more can be found on Variety.com right now. And now it's time for conversations with Variety journalists about news and trends in show business. Gene Mattis, Variety's senior media writer, unpacks the deal reached last week by the Writers Guild of America in collective bargaining. This is a 180-degree difference from the dynamic 3 years ago when this industry ground to a halt with the writers and actors strikes. Gene Mattis, thanks for joining me.
Happy to do it.
Well, Gene, at this point, it looks like you have 1 guild down and 2 to go when it comes to the 2026 contract negotiation cycle. You have just had a conversation with the negotiating committee for the Writers Guild of America. Gene, tell us what you learned about the deal and how they got there.
So we are now in the ratification period, and I think everybody expects that it will be ratified, but that doesn't mean that there aren't a few bumps along the way. And so they're holding these member meetings on Zoom where people get to ask questions. And a lot of it is about healthcare. That is the main event in this negotiation. And a lot of the changes do hit people in the pocketbook. Bottom line is costs are going up. So that is sort of a tough pill for a lot of folks.
As you flagged months ago going in, and it was sheer math, that plan was very much in debt, and that meant that the Guild had to go to the contract negotiating table saying, hi, employers, we need a big influx. And, we both know that changed the dynamics this time around. Did they give any color in terms of, they have disclosed that for the WGA, they're taking a big step and they're imposing some co-payments and they're raising some rates for some of the payments that they had deliberately kept low out of respect for the fact that writing can be a feast or famine business.
Well, the WGA has long had the Cadillac of Cadillac plans. Zero out-of-pocket premium, or zero premiums for the individual, and then very low, $50 a month for family. Obviously, that is going up. And so I think this stress has been on, we still have very good health care. It's still very competitive with most people's health plans, and be grateful for what you have is sort of part of it. But it's definitely a change for the worse, and they're sort of leaning on the basic realities of healthcare inflation. But the other huge one, obviously, has been the contraction and what that has done to the fund. And when you lose $200 million in 4 years out of your health fund, that is going to lead to a reckoning, and that's where we are.
This is just the ultimate squeeze. The healthcare costs across this country are skyrocketing, and they're skyrocketing at a time when the WGA's contributions, which are done on a project-by-project basis by very hard-fought mathematical formulas, those contributions are way down, as everybody knows, and that is a tough place for them to be. And certainly because of this great need, they did agree to a 4-year deal, which obviously is very beneficial to the companies. They get 1 more year of labor peace there. Did they talk about that in terms of how that factored into the ultimate deal that they got?
It was very much sort of framed as an exchange, like what they wanted longer term, and we wanted to draw up the health plan. And so we got what we wanted and they got what they wanted. Going forward, 2030 is going to come sooner than we think. And I think the WGA is not interested in making 4 years the norm. They would love to treat 3 years as the default. It has been 3 years pretty much throughout the history. It was pointed out to me there was one 4-year deal in the 80s, and maybe this will be the exception as well, and it'll go back to 3 years.
Of course, the 4-year test, it'll be really interesting to see if the AMPTP is absolutely resolute on that. Thank you. One very esoteric aspect of the health plan that has been a factor in the negotiations, because we all know the devil is in the details, is the extended coverage for older members of the WGA and the DGA who worked a lot many years ago and have a lot of banked credits, and that has created a cash flow squeeze for the union plans. What can you tell us how that is changed in this deal?
Yeah, that is being very significantly reformed, and I think some people are basically saying it's being reformed out of existence. The idea is you work a lot regularly, you accumulate points, and then if you don't work, which happens even to the most successful riders, then you can use your banked points to buy coverage essentially. And you can think of it as sort of like a super Cobra plan where you accumulate and you maintain the coverage that you have, even though that is going to be reformed in a very significant way, in the sense of it's going to be a lot harder to accumulate those points. You'll have to hit a much higher threshold of earnings in order to start accumulating points. You will accumulate fewer points, and then it will cost more points to maintain the same level of coverage. So that is a particularly controversial part of it, because people have accumulated these points thinking that they would get them a certain amount of health coverage, and now it won't last as long. Now, there is a sort of lower cost plan that you can opt to go on, and it will cost you the same number of points as you were expecting. But still, people were expecting to get one thing and now they're getting something else. And so that can always be a little dicey in terms of a negotiation.
It's very complicated, but you can just, on a fundamental level, the people that paid in years ago paid a whole lot less than is being now required to provide health care in 2026.
You have to earn, I think the number is $190,000 in order for your contributions to cover the cost of your health care. So they call it a Robin Hood plan, because most of the people on it are sort of not earning that level. That's just one of the things that's going to be reformed going forward, is that the extended coverage points are not going to kick in until above that level.
This was a very quiet negotiation. There was no strike authorization vote. At the risk of drawing a blanket statement, it just did not feel like that there was the will right now, with everything going on in the world, to take. Sorry, it didn't. You know what? I'm not going to go there. This was a very quiet WGA negotiation. There was no strike authorization vote. It has been seemingly kind of head down and just going through the details. Was there any flashpoints that you heard about residuals or pushes on the success formula? There was some sweetening of the success formula, correct?
Yeah, the bonus that people get on their residual if they work on one of the most popular streaming shows goes from 50% of the base residual to 75%. So that's, they set up these structures 3 years ago on the strike, and then they sort of understood that the numbers would get tweaked in the future. And so that's a case of the numbers being tweaked a little bit, but it's not a major change. And honestly, largely aside from the healthcare, it's a status quo contract. There are some changes here and there that are of interest to people who certainly are affected by them, but big picture, it's about the healthcare.
Well, it's a big week for labor peace, because, of course, Los Angeles was very closely watching the potential for a teacher strike that did seem to go down to the wire. Gene, tell us what's next for the DGA and SAG-AFTRA, both of whom are also up to conclude new master film and TV contracts this year?
Yeah, so we have SAG-AFTRA on April 27th. Optimistically, that could take a week, maybe longer. Supposedly, there are only a few issues left to address. And then DGA comes in on May 11th. And that will, again, we will be talking about healthcare because it's not as dire as the WGA's health plan, also pretty bad. And so that's probably going to be the focus of that. And the big question, as you mentioned, is will the other guilds go along with the 4 years? I feel like SAG probably will. And then DGA, though they might not like it, will probably end up doing that as well, just to sort of maintain the consistent all three guilds negotiating in the same year situation.
There's a clear strategic value to that.
Yeah, there's certainly an argument from the guild standpoint that they get a value out of all going in the same year. I think, if they had their druthers, I think the DGA would probably want to stick to 3 years, but, they probably will get something in exchange for going up to the 4th year.
SAG-AFTRA already did have a first round. They went in March before the Writers Guild of America sat down with the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. The lack of drama, the lack of fireworks would suggest that they will sit down and finish their deal. And there's no question that in the leverage realpolitik of this, the WGA having a deal makes it feel a lot less on the razor's edge that there could be a labor action. With SAG-AFTRA, the one issue that does seem like it could be a flashpoint, because it's in the headlines literally every minute, is AI and AI protections.
Like with the last negotiation, I think the union would like to be very involved in any contemplation by any of the member studios about doing purely synthetic AI avatar type characters. And so then it becomes a question of what restrictions that can we reasonably expect to get on that. That's probably the core of where we are.
Gene, thank you so much, as always, for knowing all those details.
Yep, happy to talk.
As we close out today's episode, here's a few things we're watching for. On Saturday night, I'm looking forward to attending the AFI Lifetime Achievement Honors for Eddie Murphy at the Dolby Theater in Hollywood. This should be fun. The Cannes Series Festival begins next week on the Côte d'Azur. Variety will produce the first of 3 digital dailies out of the TV-focused event starting April 24th. Next week also brings Variety's annual Entertainment Marketing Summit. It'll be held in Los Angeles on April 22nd. Our speakers include Warner Brothers' Pam Abdi and NBC Universal's Perlina Igbokwe. And we'll have our ever-popular Meeting of the Minds of Movie Marketers, moderated by my colleague, Matt Donnelly. Can't wait. We love to hear from our listeners, so please send thoughts, gripes, and other feedback about Daily Variety to podcasts@variety.com. Before we go, congrats to Joey Monteiro and Alexander Altschuler of Neon. Monteiro has been promoted to president of worldwide marketing for the indie film distributor. Altschuler has been up to president of media. Monteiro joined the company in 2024 from Sierra Affinity E1. Altschuler signed on in 2023 after 5 years with A24. Thanks for listening. This episode was written and reported by me, Cynthia Littleton, with contributions from Gene Mattis. Sticks, nicks, hick picks. Please leave us a review at the podcast platform of your choice, and please tune in tomorrow for another episode of Daily Variety. And whether they think that this will be whether they think this deal will be accepted by the membership.